Welcome back, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Governor Greg Abbott is steering Texas lawmakers towards specific issues that he would like them to tackle first. And many of them are not too surprising. We know that they have pushed for families to use taxpayer dollars for children's private schooling. And last night, he included school choice among 7 emergency items for this legislative session. This was during his State of the State address. We want to note you can watch that and also read it in full right now on our website, kxan.com, in case you missed it. Also, in case you missed it, here is what he included in those emergency items: property tax relief, water investments, teacher pay, those education savings accounts that we mentioned, bail reform, and cybersecurity protections for the state. So much to get into today.
Truly. This afternoon, we are going to talk more about what this all means for the work that the legislature will now do with 2 of our guests here from both sides of the aisle. Dennis Bonnen is the former House Speaker and represented Southeast Texas for more than 2 decades in the Texas House. Meanwhile, over here, Mark Strama represented the Austin area in the House for 8 years. Mark and Dennis, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate this.
Thanks for having us.
It was certainly a big night for many Texas lawmakers out there, but I want to begin, Dennis, by talking about the importance of the governor naming these kinds of emergency items. How would those now guide what lawmakers can do at the Capitol?
So it's significant because the governor is stating to not only the legislature but the people of Texas what his priorities are. And so it's really an opportunity for him to say, these are what I, as governor of Texas, because remember, the governor doesn't get to file legislation.
Right.
He's relying on a House member and a Senate member to do that. So he's showing the partnership with the legislature. As you noticed in his speech, he did a great job of calling out House and Senate members. He says, I'm working on this priority and I'm working with Senator X and Representative Y to do so. So it's the opportunity for the governor to lay out his priorities to the legislature and, more importantly, to the people of Texas, and show the partnership that he's building with the members of the House and Senate to move these priorities forward.
There's also, Mark, a procedural element here. He actually has to kind of signal to the House that they can, or the House and the Senate, that they can take up some of these items. Explain that kind of background for people.
Well, it's been 10 years since I was a member, but as I recall the rules,
Constitutional.
A bill can't be heard on the floor or can't pass until 60 days
Correct.
after the session begins, unless designated an emergency item. So in addition to giving a speech, he no doubt had to sign some formal documentation declaring those issues emergencies so that they're eligible for consideration in the earliest days of the legislative session.
Which is an interesting piece that a lot of times people beat on the House and say, why they haven't passed this? Why didn't the House get to work and do that? Constitutionally, this weird little thing called the Constitution is why they're not doing
that old
that.
thing.
Exactly. And people look right past that and take their shots and what have you.
And in fairness, the House is still constituting itself. They don't even have committee chairmanships yet.
Right.
They don't have committee appointments yet.
Correct.
So the House really can't consider legislation, even emergency items, until it's had a little more time to get itself organized. The Senate gets to hit the ground running because the lieutenant governor is the presiding officer from day one by election of the people of Texas. The speaker has to be selected on the first day of session and then needs some time to appoint committees.
Yeah, things still baking here. We know we're so early on. We do want to get into the substance of his speech. We know many of those emergency items are really familiar territory for lawmakers. So to either of you, what, if anything, surprised you? What jumped out that maybe you weren't expecting him to touch on?
I wasn't surprised.
Yeah.
And hey, that's an
That was
answer
kind of maybe
too.
the whole point of it, yeah.
Which actually Governor Abbott deserves credit for that too. I mean, the governor's been talking about these issues as priorities for over a year. I mean, the governor's done a great job of communicating what's important to him to the people of Texas. Now, this was not a surprise, but I think it's something that people aren't talking a lot about that's hugely important. So we're talking about property tax relief. And so the governor says, I want property tax relief. We're going to do more and we're going to do better. $10 billion. That all sounds wonderful. That isn't the headline, in my opinion. The headline is we've got to rein in local entities like our school districts passing bonds and what have you, so that that property tax relief that has already been done in the billions of dollars by the legislature and the governor for many years before now, and to do another $10 billion, he made the huge point. I want a 75% vote. I want a 2/3 vote of the people to raise any local property tax. That, I think, is a huge item. It's an important item because the reality is the legislature has been spending billions to reduce property taxes, while on the local level they raise those taxes and the local taxpayer never feels the impact of the dollars being spent by the legislature, and somewhat creates a double taxation.
I want to follow up with you there. We wanted to ask about this. We know we saw voter approved initiatives in certain municipalities. Here in Austin and Travis County, voters approved funding for more affordable child care options, and that would of course raise taxes. So how do you balance things that voters in certain areas of Texas want with this effort to cut taxes across the state.
I think what the governor's saying is it better be the highest of priority and their voters better desire it beyond the property tax reduction that the state legislature and he enacted. And so I think the goal is that full awareness of the voting public. That better be your priority. You better be able to get a supermajority to be able to put that into place in the local entity. And honestly, I think he's far more focused in what's happening at the local school districts with bond elections and things of that sort. That's what's eating up the most. People aren't aware of this, but local ISDs have passed 75 plus B with $1 billion of bonds in the last 5 years.
So I'm on the board of the United Way for Greater Austin. We were very involved in that initiative for childcare, and it did not get 2/3. It came close to, I think it got around 60% of the vote.
Right.
And to say that that's not a mandate from the people of Travis County to invest in childcare, which is one of the critical drivers of affordability in this community, I think that's bad public policy. Look, there was a bunch, I will agree with what Dennis said. The governor deserves credit. He told us what he wants, and his agenda yesterday is what he said he would do. I think there's a few areas where I think there were some notable omissions. He talks about over the past 4 years, we've had a 35% increase in the power generation capacity on the grid. According to ERCOT, 92% of that increase comes from wind, solar, and battery storage. That's an omission that I think if we acknowledged what we are doing, what we're actually achieving in this state while he's governor, we could really lead the energy transition that is occurring all around us. He actually said in the speech that per pupil student spending has never been higher, and on a nominal dollars basis, I think that's true, but on a real dollars basis, according to the Legislative Budget Board's fiscal size up, we're spending $1,300 less per pupil than we spent when you were Speaker of the House in the 2019-2020 academic year. We've lost $1,300 in buying power per student. Imagine as a parent what your child's school could do with an extra $1,300 to educate your child.
Yeah, we heard some of the House Democrats today in their rebuttal to the State of the State address some of those concerns. I want to stick with education, though, really quickly, because that is likely to be the marquee issue of this particular session. So as we're waiting for the Senate to even take a vote tomorrow on potentially passing education savings accounts, I'm wondering, because both of you served in the House, what is your expectation this time around? Because the House has really been that stopgap preventing this from passing in years past. So I'll let you start, Dennis.
I believe Speaker Burrows is committed to getting school choice passed in the House. Governor Abbott declared it as his priority 2 years ago. He forewarned everyone and said, if you don't vote for it, I'm going to come and see you in your elections, in your communities. And he actually did that. And
in some cases that worked, yeah.
That's right. He had success. And so, votes matter. And so the Texas House has a different makeup this time because of the activities of the governor and others in those primaries, as they said they were going to do. And so I believe the votes are there in the Texas House to pass school choice. And I honestly think that it's in the best interest of the House. I agree with the policy, but also it's not good for the Texas House and the Senate to be at war with the #1 priority of the governor of Texas, especially an incredibly popular governor like Governor Abbott, who's done a great job. So the House has the votes, in my opinion, and they're going to pass school choice when it's their turn. And as you mentioned, the Senate's going to probably pass it tomorrow and have it over there sooner than ever, before they can even constitutionally do it without even a committee.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're prognosticating, I'm going to guess it's going to pass too. The question will be the breadth of its scope. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, I don't know how that became the #1 priority of anybody looking at the needs in public education in our state. We've had choice in Texas for a long time through charter schools. Here in AISD, students, parents can choose any school in the AISD school system that they want to go to if there's capacity in it. So we've introduced the concept of competition and accountability to the public schools for a long time. Somehow or other, it has not been the magical panacea to solving the difficulties our schools face. Perhaps what's challenging our schools is the fact that we spend $4,400 less than the national average per student. Even if we got back that $1,300 just to get us to parity with where we were 5 years ago, we're still, right now, $4,400 below the national average per pupil spending.
We got to recover from Biden's inflation on that $1,300, and I think there's a plan to do that.
Which is why I was so surprised the governor neglected to account for that inflation that he has otherwise talked about frequently.
Lots of things we can get into. I do want to ask you all one more question here before we go. This was not something listed as one of the emergency items that we've been discussing, but there was quite a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We know that this is something that really made headlines last week with an executive order from the governor's office. He noted banning, DEI from any entity that receives money from the state. So I think a lot of the questions we've gotten from our audience is, what would that mean in practice? What does that really look like?
The line that stood out to me in the speech was banning DEI from public education.
Right,
and,
K through 12.
And I was thinking, didn't we just do that with the CRT bill that Brian Hughes authored 3 or 4 years ago? I'm honestly, as a practical matter, to answer your question, I'm not sure what it affects. The Supreme Court has already outlawed affirmative action. We had that anti-CRT bill, which, even Democrats said this is a dumb bill because we don't do CRT in K through 12 education. So, I'm at a loss for actually what problem is trying to be solved.
I think what he's talking about, and he said it in his speech, a teacher who says some of these things should be fired immediately. Governor Abbott said that yesterday. I think the policies are in place. I think the challenges are the policies being effectively implemented. Are they being followed? Are we abiding by these policies? And so I think the governor, again, you have to remember, the governor has the bully pulpit. He has the power of his voice. And the State of the State is one of the most powerful moments for the governor to have his voice be heard by the people of Texas. And so I think yesterday what he's saying is bills have been passed, but we're not going to continue to have people ignoring what has been stated is necessary in our education system and across state government.
So this is a good chance to come full circle to when we were talking about his desire to make local entities have to get 66% of the voters to approve a tax increase. At some point, the governor is entitled to an opinion about whether a teacher ought to be fired, but the governor should not be firing teachers. Local school districts exist for a reason. We can't govern everything from Austin. And this desire to replace local choice and local empowerment with mandates from Austin seems contrary to what I always thought conservatives
Well, I think the governor clearly doesn't have the ability to fire a teacher, but he has the ability of that bully pulpit to let local districts know you need to be following the law. You need to quit doing this indoctrination. And if you have people that are doing it, you should solve that problem.
So much. I wish we could keep you guys here for the rest of
Definitely.
the show. We didn't even get to water infrastructure, bail reform. Thankfully, we want to let our audience know that Dennis and Mark will be joining us throughout the legislative session to try to make sense of the moves that are happening at the Capitol, and we want to catch up on some of those other giant issues too. But Dennis and Mark, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Appreciate
we
you
really
all.
appreciate it. We want to get over to Freddie for a look outside.